Look, I have witnessed many stupid things in my 300 cycles of existence. I have seen Krell warriors challenge plasma storms. I have watched Vorthan diplomats attempt to negotiate with asteroid fields, but nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the day I saw Tarek the Untouchable get knocked into next week by a human female who barely reached his shoulder plates. My name is Ven and I serve as a combat analyst aboard the Galactic Council's flagship, the Meridian Ascent. My job involves studying warfare patterns, predicting outcomes, and generally keeping our military forces from doing anything catastrophically idiotic. It is a job that pays well but constantly reminds me that intelligence is not evenly distributed across the galaxy. The incident occurred during what was supposed to be a routine diplomatic gathering on Station Praxis 9. Nothing fancy, just the usual parade of species representatives pretending to care about trade agreements while secretly plotting how to exploit loopholes in said agreements. Standard council business, really. Tarek the Untouchable was a Gorvan champion. For those unfamiliar with the Gorvan, imagine if someone took a rhinoceros, made it bipedal, gave it anger management issues, and then covered it in armor plating that could deflect energy weapons. Tarek stood nearly 3 meters tall, weighed somewhere in the vicinity of 400 kilograms, and possessed a nervous system that operated on a completely different frequency than most sentient species. This made him effectively immune to most conventional attacks. Energy weapons? Bounced off. Projectiles? His hide was too thick. Neural disruptors? His brain chemistry just laughed at them. He had earned his title through 200 consecutive victories in the Outer Rim fighting circuits. 200. The Gorvan had begun to worship him as a living deity. Other species hired him as a bodyguard at rates that could fund small planetary governments. Insurance companies refused to cover anyone who challenged him, and he knew it. Oh, ancestors preserve us, did he know it? The human delegation arrived 3 days into the conference. They were late because, according to their lead diplomat, someone had input the coordinates wrong and they had ended up near a nebula that was really pretty but totally not helpful. This should have been my first warning sign about human competence. It was not. There were 5 humans total, 4 men and 1 woman. The woman's name was Victoria Reeves, and she served as their security officer. Not their chief of security. Not their military attaché. Their security officer. Singular. As in, she was the only person responsible for keeping their entire delegation safe. When I first saw her credentials, I actually checked 3 times to make sure there had not been a translation error. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only achieved faster than light travel about 15 cycles ago. Their world, Earth, was a death world by council standards. Gravity too high. Atmosphere too oxygen-rich. Predators too numerous. The fact that anything evolved to sentience there was remarkable. The fact that they then decided to strap themselves to controlled explosions and fling themselves into space was pure insanity. But they were here now, and the council had extended them provisional membership status while we figured out what to do with them. Victoria Reeves stood approximately 1.7 meters tall. She had dark hair pulled back in what humans call a ponytail, brown eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw, and the build of someone who exercised regularly but was not trying to win any bodybuilding competitions. She wore a simple black suit that marked her as security personnel, and carried exactly 0 visible weapons. The first time Tarek saw the human delegation, he laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Gorvan laughter sounds like rocks being ground together inside a metal drum. These are the mighty humans? He bellowed across the main concourse, his voice echoing off the station's dome ceiling. These soft little creatures who think they belong among the stars? The human diplomats ignored him. They had been briefed extensively on how to handle hostile first contacts. Smile. Nod. Do not engage. Standard procedure that every species learned early. Victoria, however, stopped walking. She turned her head slowly toward Tarek, and I saw something flicker across her face. Not fear. Not even anger, really. It was the expression of someone who had just been presented with a math problem they found mildly annoying. Keep walking, one of the male diplomats whispered to her. Protocol says we don't engage. Protocol can take a short walk out an airlock. Victoria muttered back, but she did keep moving. Tarek was not finished. He never was. The Gorvan champion strode across the concourse, his massive feet causing minor vibrations in the deck plating, until he stood directly in the human's path. Station security started moving toward the situation, but slowly. Nobody really wanted to confront Tarek unless absolutely necessary. I have heard stories about your kind, Tarek announced, leaning down so his face was level with the lead human diplomat, a nervous-looking man named Marcus Webb. They say humans are warriors. They say you conquered your own world through violence and cunning. They say you are dangerous. Marcus cleared his throat. We prefer to think of ourselves as survivors. Honored champion. We have had our conflicts. Certainly. But we have also learned the value of peace and cooperation, which is why we are here today, seeking to build bridges between our species and the greater galactic community through mutual respect and understanding that benefits all parties involved in this unprecedented opportunity for cultural exchange. You talk too much, Tarak interrupted. He straightened to his full height and spread his arms wide. I am Tarak, the untouchable. For 200 battles I have remained undefeated. No weapon can harm me. No warrior can strike me. I am invincible. That's nice, Victoria said flatly. The concourse went silent. And I mean completely silent. Even the ambient station noise seemed to fade away as every being within earshot turned to stare at the human female, who had just dismissed the most dangerous fighter in 3 sectors with the same tone one might use to acknowledge someone's opinion on weather patterns. Tarek's eyes, which were already small and beady in his massive skull, narrowed further. What did you say, human? I said that's nice, Victoria repeated, her voice carrying that particular kind of patience that suggested she was dealing with someone mentally slow. You're very proud of yourself. Congratulations. Can we get to our quarters now? We have been traveling for 6 days and I would really like to sleep in a bed that doesn't fold out of a wall. I could see Tarek's shoulder plates rising, a sure sign of Gorvin aggression. His breathing became heavier. A low rumble started building in his chest. You dare mock me? The rumble turned into a roar. You insignificant speck of flesh, I could crush you without effort. I am Tarak the Untouchable. You mentioned that already, Victoria said. The untouchable thing. We heard you the first time. 2 of the human diplomats had gone pale. One had actually started praying to some earth deity. But Victoria just stood there, looking bored. I challenge you, Tarak declared suddenly, and the entire concourse erupted in whispers. A formal challenge from a Gorvan was no small matter. It was binding under council law. It had to be witnessed. It had to be resolved. I'm not fighting you, Victoria said. You must. I have issued formal challenge. You cannot refuse. Watch me. If you refuse, you admit that humans are cowards. You admit that all your species' claims of strength are lies. You will bring shame to your entire world. Marcus stepped forward quickly. Honored champion, perhaps we could resolve this through dialogue. There is no need for violence. We are all civilized beings here. Tarak did not even look at him. His eyes remained locked on Victoria. Coward, he said simply. Victoria sighed. It was the longest, most exhausted sigh I have ever heard from any species. Fine. You want to do this? Let's do this. But I'm not using weapons and neither are you. Just you and me. 1 strike each. If you can land a hit on me that I feel, you win. If I can do the same to you, I win. Tarek's laughter boomed again. You bargain for your own humiliation, human. Very well. I accept these terms. We fight tomorrow at mid-cycle in the central arena. The entire station will watch as I demonstrate the superiority of Gorvan's strength. Cool, Victoria said. Can we go now? As the humans were escorted away by increasingly nervous station personnel, I pulled up Victoria's file on my datapad. There had to be something I was missing. Some hidden advantage. Some secret. Her record showed standard military service in something called the United States Marine Corps. Combat deployments to various Earth conflict zones. Honorable discharge after 8 years. Basic hand-to-hand combat training. Marksmanship scores that were good, but not exceptional. Nothing that suggested she could challenge a Gorvan champion and expect anything other than immediate hospitalization. That night I could not sleep. I kept running scenarios through my analytical systems, trying to find any possible outcome where the humans survived tomorrow's confrontation. I found none. Even if she managed to dodge Tarek's strike, which was unlikely given his speed despite his size, she would still need to hurt him with her counter-strike, and that was simply impossible. Gorvan physiology was too robust. Their pain threshold was too high. Their nervous systems operated on frequencies that made them resistant to neural trauma. This human was going to get herself killed over pride. The next day, the central arena was packed. Word had spread across the entire station. Beings from dozens of species crowded the viewing platforms, placed bets, and speculated on how quickly the human would fall. The general consensus was less than 10 seconds. I found myself in the front row, datapad ready to record everything for my official report. This was going to be a tragedy, but it was also going to be a valuable lesson in human limitations. The arena itself was a circular space about 30 meters in diameter, with a padded floor designed to prevent serious injury during sanctioned combat. Station medical teams waited at the edges ready to respond instantly. Tarak entered first, to thunderous applause from the Gorvan spectators and respectful silence from everyone else. He wore minimal armor, just ceremonial pieces on his shoulders and chest. He did not need protection. He was the untouchable. Victoria entered second, and the arena went quiet. She had changed into simple athletic clothing, flexible pants, a fitted shirt, shoes with rubber soles. She looked even smaller next to Tarek, like a child standing beside a siege vehicle. The arbiter, a neutral Quilarian official, stepped forward to explain the rules. This is a formal challenge under Article 73 of the Council Combat Accords. Each combatant will deliver one strike. Victory is determined by acknowledged impact. No weapons, no external assist. Do both parties understand? Yes, Tarek said. Sure, Victoria said. Then begin. Tarek did not waste time. He stepped forward and swung one massive arm in a horizontal arc aimed at Victoria's midsection. It was not his fastest possible strike, because he was not trying to kill her. He was trying to humiliate her. He wanted her to feel the hit, to be knocked across the arena, to understand the gap between human and Gorvan power. Victoria dropped under the swing so smoothly it looked choreographed. She did not stumble, did not lose balance, just smoothly ducked, and Tarek's arm passed through empty air above her head. The crowd gasped. Tarek spun, faster than something his size should be able to move, and launched a second strike. But the rules said one strike. He had already committed to his attack and missed. Now it was Victoria's turn. She straightened up slowly, looked at Tarek, looked at his chest, his throat, his head. She was calculating something, and I desperately wanted to know what. Your turn ended, she said quietly. Mine starts now. And then Victoria Reeves did something that made absolutely no sense from any tactical standpoint I could analyze. She stepped forward, pulled her right arm back, made a fist, and punched Tarek directly in the throat. The sound of the impact was not loud. That was the first thing that confused me. When Gorvan fight each other, you hear it. Bone against bone produces a crack like thunder. Armor plates colliding sounds like starships docking badly, but this punch, this simple human punch delivered by a female who weighed maybe 60 kilograms soaking wet, made almost no sound at all. Just a soft, almost polite thump. Tarek froze. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened. No sound came out, which was unusual because Gorvan are never quiet. They bellow, they roar, they grunt, they make some kind of noise constantly. Silence from a Gorvan is like silence from a supernova. It means something has gone catastrophically wrong. Then Tarek's eyes rolled back in his head, his knees buckled, and all 400 kilograms of the greatest Gorvan warrior in recent history collapsed onto the arena floor like someone had cut his power supply. The medical teams rushed forward immediately. Scanners appeared. Emergency protocols activated. The crowd remained absolutely frozen in stunned silence. I was already accessing my datapad, pulling up every medical file I could find on Gorvan physiology. What had just happened? How had a single punch from a human female accomplished what 200 previous opponents could not? Victoria stood exactly where she had delivered the strike, watching the medical teams work with the same calm expression she had worn throughout this entire ridiculous situation. She was not celebrating, not gloating, just waiting. One of the medical technicians, a Quilarian with excellent credentials, looked up from his scanner with an expression of pure bewilderment. He is alive, but unconscious. All vital signs are present, but severely depressed. Neural activity has decreased to minimal levels. It is as if his brain has simply decided to stop processing information. Is he breathing? The arbiter demanded. Yes, but barely. We need to transport him to medical immediately. As they loaded Tarek onto an emergency stretcher that groaned under his weight, the arbiter turned to Victoria. What did you do to him? I hit him in the throat, Victoria said simply. You all saw it. One strike, as agreed. But how did this incapacitate him? Gorvan physiology is resistant to blunt force trauma. Their nervous systems do not respond to conventional pain stimulus. Their armor plating extends internally around vital organs. Victoria shrugged. Yeah, but they still need to breathe, right? And breathing requires specific muscles and nerves working correctly. I noticed his throat had less external plating than the rest of him. Seemed like a logical target. You knocked him unconscious with a throat punch. I heard myself saying out loud, unable to process this information properly. Technically, I disrupted his vagus nerve, caused a vasovagal response, dropped his blood pressure dramatically, and induced syncope. Victoria corrected. The unconsciousness is a secondary effect. But yeah, basically a throat punch. The Quilarian medical technician looked like someone had just explained advanced mathematics using interpretive dance. That should not work on Gorvin physiology. Well, it did, Victoria pointed out reasonably. So maybe your medical databases need updating. Within the hour, the entire station knew what had happened. Within 2 hours, the story had spread to nearby systems. Within 4 hours, I was fielding inquiry requests from 16 different military organizations, 3 research institutes, and 1 very angry Gorvin Council representative, who wanted to know why their champion was currently in a medically induced coma and showing no signs of waking up. I sat in my quarters reviewing the security footage for the 47th time. The punch itself lasted less than a second. Victoria's form was good but not exceptional. She had put her body weight behind it, rotated her hips properly, followed through with the strike. It was textbook human combat technique. Nothing special, except for the results. My door chime sounded. "Enter," I called out, expecting another council official demanding explanations I did not have. Victoria Reeves walked in instead, carrying 2 containers of what smelled like earth coffee. She set one on my desk and kept the other for herself. "You look like you could use this. Fair warning, it is probably too strong for non-human consumption. But you folks keep asking us to share our culture, so here we are." I stared at the container suspiciously. "Why are you here?" "Because you have been reviewing that footage all day and I figured you might have questions," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk without being invited. Very human behavior. They have almost no concept of proper hierarchical protocol. Also, your medical teams keep asking me the same things over and over, and I thought maybe if I explained it to someone with actual analytical training we could get everyone on the same page. "You put a Gorvin champion into a coma." "I did," she agreed cheerfully. "Although, to be fair, he did challenge me. And he did agree to the terms. And technically, I won the challenge according to the rules as stated. So really, this is all completely legal." "Legal does not mean comprehensible," I said. "Gorvin are nearly invulnerable. Their biology specifically evolved to resist predator attacks on their homeworld, which features carnivores that make your Earth dinosaurs look harmless." "How did you know that strike would work?" Victoria took a long drink of her coffee before answering. "Okay, so here is the thing about invulnerability. It is almost never absolute. There are always exceptions. Always edge cases. Always some vulnerability that got overlooked because it rarely matters." Tarek's whole reputation was built on the idea that nobody could hurt him with conventional attacks. Energy weapons, projectiles, blades, whatever. All true. His armor plating and nervous system make him basically immune to that stuff. "So you attacked his nervous system differently?" "Exactly. I could not hurt him through pain receptors because his pain threshold is too high and his nerves operate on the wrong frequency. But pain is not the only way to disrupt the nervous system. The vagus nerve controls a whole bunch of involuntary functions: heart rate, breathing, digestion, all that good stuff. It also has a fun little quirk where sudden pressure on it can cause a rapid drop in heart rate and blood pressure. In Amines we call it a vasovagal response. Makes you dizzy, sometimes makes you faint. And you gambled that Gorvin had similar physiology." "I did not gamble," Victoria said, looking mildly offended. "I researched. Your station database has extensive medical files on every council species, including very detailed anatomical charts of Gorvian biology. I spent about 3 hours reviewing them the night before the challenge, found the vagus nerve equivalent, noted its location, confirmed it had less external protection than other areas, and planned accordingly." I felt my mouthparts hanging open slightly. "You learned Gorvin anatomy in 3 hours?" "I mean, I did not memorize every detail," she admitted. "Just the parts that mattered for not getting killed and also maybe winning. Focus study is pretty efficient when you have proper motivation, and the motivation of not being turned into paste by an angry rhinoceros alien is pretty solid motivation." "This is insane." "This is practical," Victoria corrected. "Look, humans are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We do not have natural armor or energy resistance or psychic abilities or any of the cool stuff some of you folks have. What we do have is pattern recognition, tool use, and the ability to learn really quickly when our lives depend on it." Tarek was counting on his reputation and his biological advantages. He forgot that advantages only work if your opponent does not know how to work around them. My datapad chimed with an incoming message. "Medical update on Tarek." I opened it quickly. "Patient remains unconscious. Neural activity slowly returning to normal levels. Prognosis unclear. Estimated recovery time unknown. Recommendation is continued observation and supportive care." "He is still not waking up," I said. Victoria's expression shifted to something almost resembling concern. "Yeah, I heard. I did not mean to put him in a coma. I just wanted to knock him out long enough to win the challenge. The extended unconsciousness is a complication." "A complication?" I repeated flatly. Look, human anatomy and Gorvin anatomy are similar but not identical. I made my best educated guess based on available data. Turns out their recovery time from vasovagal syncope is significantly longer than ours. Who knew? Okay, I probably should have known, but in my defense nobody has ever tried this on a Gorvin before, so there was no existing research to reference. You experimented on a council champion. I defended myself against a council champion who formally challenged me and agreed to terms that allowed for physical strikes, Victoria countered. Totally different framing. Before I could respond, my door chimed again. This time it was Marcus Webb, the lead human diplomat, looking significantly more stressed than he had when they arrived. Victoria, we need to talk. Nah, I am kind of in the middle of something, Victoria said, gesturing to me with her coffee. The Gorvin Council has filed an official complaint. They are calling this an act of aggression against their species. They want you arrested, tried, and expelled from council space. They are threatening to withdraw from 3 different trade agreements if we do not turn you over to their justice system. Victoria sighed again, that same exhausted sigh from yesterday. Of course they are. Because heaven forbid anyone admit their invincible champion got beaten fairly in a challenge he initiated. This is not funny, Marcus said. This could destroy our chances of council membership before we even really get started. Do you understand how many years of work went into getting humanity to this point? I understand that your years of work do not mean I should have let myself get punched by a 400-kilogram alien who was trying to humiliate our entire species, Victoria shot back. What was I supposed to do, Marcus? Refuse the challenge, and let them think humans are cowards. Take the hit, and end up in medical myself. There was no good option here. You could have lost gracefully. I do not lose gracefully. I am not built that way. Marines do not surrender, we do not quit, and we definitely do not let some overconfident alien use us as a punching bag to prove a point. I watched this argument develop with fascination. Humans have very different internal hierarchies than most species. Victoria clearly respected Marcus as the delegation leader, but she also felt zero obligation to follow his directions when she disagreed with them. It was simultaneously chaotic and strangely functional. Both of you need to calm down, I interrupted. The challenge was legal. The terms were clear. Victoria won according to the rules. The Gorvin Council can file whatever complaints they want, but council law is council law. They cannot change the outcome just because they dislike it. Marcus turned to me with desperate hope in his eyes. You will support our position. I will report the facts accurately, I said, which include the fact that Tarek initiated the challenge, agreed to the terms, and lost fairly. Whether the council chooses to accept those facts is a different question entirely. My datapad chimed again. Another medical update. Patient is waking. Vital signs stabilizing. Neural activity approaching normal levels. Full recovery expected. He is waking up, I announced. Victoria set down her coffee. I should probably go apologize or something, right? That seems like the diplomatic thing to do. You want to apologize to the being you just humiliated in front of the entire station? Marcus asked incredulously. I want to make sure he understands I was not trying to kill him or permanently injure him, Victoria said. Just win the challenge. There is a difference. Plus, if he wakes up still angry, I would rather deal with that now than have him hunting me across the galaxy for the next 50 years seeking revenge. Seems inefficient. The 3 of us made our way to medical. Word had already spread that Tarek was regaining consciousness, and a crowd had gathered outside the ward. Gorvin representatives, council officials, curious station personnel, and at least 24 journalists from various news networks. Inside the medical bay, Tarek lay on a reinforced bed that was clearly struggling with his weight. His eyes were open but unfocused. A Quillarian doctor was running scans while explaining something in a soothing voice. When Tarek saw Victoria enter, his eyes sharpened immediately. For a moment, I thought we were about to have another incident. His hands clenched. His breathing increased. Then he spoke, his voice rough but clear. You struck me. I did, Victoria agreed. You challenged me. I accepted. Those were the terms. I felt nothing, Tarek said slowly, as if still processing this information. The blow landed, and then there was nothing. No pain, no impact. Just darkness. Yeah, that is how hitting the vagus nerve works, Victoria explained. It does not hurt. It just makes your nervous system panic and shut everything down temporarily. Very effective on most species with similar neurological structures. You studied my people's biology to defeat me. I studied your people's biology to survive you, Victoria corrected. Defeating you was a bonus. Tarek was silent for a long moment. The medical monitors beeped steadily. The crowd outside pressed closer to the windows trying to hear what was being said. Then, to my absolute shock, Tarek began to laugh. Not the grinding, unpleasant laughter from before. This was different, genuine, almost respectful. 200 battles, he said. 200 victories. And I am defeated by a human who barely reaches my chest. The universe has a sense of humor after all. Does this mean you are not going to file charges or seek revenge or any of that dramatic stuff? Marcus asked hopefully. Charges? For what? I challenged her. She defeated me fairly. There is no dishonor in losing to a superior strategist. Tarek shifted on the bed, wincing slightly. Though I would appreciate knowing exactly what you did, human Victoria. For future reference, Victoria spent the next 10 minutes explaining human neuroanatomy, the vagus nerve, vasovagal responses, and the specific technique she had used. Tarek listened with intense focus, occasionally asking questions that demonstrated he was actually understanding the concepts. Fascinating, he said finally. All this time I believed my invulnerability was absolute. I trained to resist pain, to withstand damage, to outlast any opponent. But you did not attack my strengths. You found a weakness I did not know existed and exploited it perfectly. That is what humans do, Victoria said with a slight smile. We are not the biggest or the strongest or the fastest, but we are really good at finding the weak points in systems that think they do not have any. The Gorvan Council representatives were less pleased with this explanation, but even they had to admit that according to the strict letter of council law, Victoria had done nothing wrong. The challenge had been legal, the terms had been clear, the outcome had been decisive. Within a week, the story had spread across the entire galactic community. Tarek the Untouchable defeated by a human security officer with a single punch. It became a legend, a cautionary tale, a teaching moment. And Victoria Reeves? She went back to her duties protecting the human delegation, utterly unconcerned about her newfound fame. I saw her one more time before the human delegation departed. She was in the station commissary eating something that smelled vaguely toxic and reading a datapad. What are you studying now? I asked, sitting across from her without invitation. Apparently humans were not the only ones who could ignore proper protocols. Thelian physiology, she said, not looking up. I heard we are visiting their homeworld next month. Figured I should learn the basics. You know, just in case another overconfident warrior decides humans need to be put in their place. You are planning for the next fight already? I am planning to not need a next fight, Victoria corrected. But if one happens anyway, I would rather be prepared than surprised. That is just common sense. I found myself making a notation in my report for the council. Humans were dangerous, yes, but not in the way most species feared. They were not conquerors or warmongers. They were survivors who had learned to turn disadvantages into opportunities, to study their opponents, to find solutions where others saw only obstacles, and perhaps most terrifying of all, they were curious. They wanted to learn. They wanted to understand. They wanted to know how things worked so they could figure out how to work around them. The galaxy was going to have to adapt to humanity, because humanity was very clearly not planning to adapt to us. Tarek recovered fully within 2 weeks. He retired from professional combat and began teaching defensive techniques, with special emphasis on recognizing and protecting against unconventional attacks. He became one of humanity's strongest advocates in the council, arguing that any species creative enough to defeat him deserved respect and membership. And somewhere in council records filed under improbable victories and unlikely outcomes, there exists a complete analysis of the day a human woman knocked the Untouchable into a coma with a single punch. I wrote that report myself. I made sure it was accurate, detailed and comprehensive, because the galaxy needed to understand what had really happened that day. Not that humans were invincible, but that underestimating them was a mistake nobody should make twice.